Welcome to On the Chain.
Let's go into this
All right,
right
what's the
here.
first topic? What are we getting
Let's
into?
talk about Stu Alderati. So finally, you know, we have is Ripple actually publicly being able to comment on the Hinman emails. I know somebody had asked Brad Garlinghouse prior, like the one day before, he's like, I can't comment. Let's let them come out first, right? And so everyone in the XRP community thought this was going to be the holy grail or something. They thought that this was going to be the 589. Everything was going to be, you know, unicorns and rainbows, and it was just going to be the best thing ever. And I was just like, I was actually thinking I'd be surprised if we even got. I was surprised we got any kind of bump, but usually when good news comes out, we lose, right, Jeff?
That's what XRP has been known for.
Pretty much, yeah. So Stu Alderati, General Counsel for Ripple, said it's been 5 years since Bill Hinman gave his infamous speech and through the SEC's lawsuit against Ripple and 7 court orders. That's how many orders it took. Remember, you need to give us the emails. No, you need to give us the emails. 7 orders. Finally share what happened behind the scenes, though now it's public email drafts in the speech. And Ripple compiled this little video right here, which we're going to take a look at here.
On June 14th, 2018, then SEC Director of Corporation Finance William Hinman gave a high-profile speech where he declared that a token is not a security when it becomes, quote, sufficiently decentralized. But internal emails and documents show that senior SEC officials repeatedly warned Hinman that his speech wasn't true to the law and would greatly confuse the markets even more than they already were. Now, after more than 2 years and 7 court orders, we can finally share some of what we found in the Hinman speech documents. The SEC head of trading and markets warned Hinman that he was making up factors that, quote, go beyond the typical Howey analysis, as in not in the law, and that the speech could lead to not just confusion, but greater confusion on what is a security. Hinman ignored him.
If the network on which the token or coin is to function is sufficiently decentralized, and the purchasers no longer have a reasonable expectation that a person or a group is going to carry out essential managerial or entrepreneurial efforts, those assets might not represent an investment contract.
The same official told Hinman he should tie his speech, quote, more closely and explicitly to the Howey analysis. Hinman not only ignored him, but deliberately created factors beyond those identified by the Supreme Court in the Howey case.
I wanted to just note a few things. This list is not meant to be exhaustive, but these are things that we look at.
The SEC's own general counsel warned specifically that it's legally irrelevant if someone retains a stake in a token and is motivated to take action to increase its value, and that Hinman should delete it from the speech. And once again, Hinman ignored them and said without any legal support that it was important to ask.
As that person or group retained a stake or other interest in the digital asset such that it would be motivated to expend efforts to cause an increase in the value of the digital asset.
Both trading and markets and the general counsel also disagreed with Hinman's belief that if a network was sufficiently decentralized, information asymmetries would no longer exist, noting that a network creator would likely have more information than a retail holder, using Vitalik Buterin as an example. They warned Hinman that by creating this, quote, other category and focusing on information asymmetries, he was exposing a regulatory gap that the SEC may not have the jurisdiction to fill. Again, Hinman ignored them.
As the network becomes more truly decentralized, the ability to even to identify a promoter or to make the requisite, and someone that could actually make the requisite disclosures becomes in many cases difficult or and perhaps much less meaningful.
On June 4th, Hinman wrote that he didn't see a, quote, need to regulate Ether as a security, and set up a call with Ethereum's co-founder, Vitalik Buterin, later that week to, quote, confirm our understanding. On June 11th, the SEC's own general counsel advised against including any direct statement about Ether in the speech, because it would be difficult for the SEC to, quote, take a different position on Ether in the future. The next day, Trading and Markets wrote that the statements about Ether were, quote, likely to create more confusion. Hinman ignored all of them and decided to make headlines, picking winners and losers instead.
Moreover, putting aside the fundraising that accompanied the creation of Ether, based on my understanding of the present state of Ether, the Ethereum network, its decentralized structure, we believe current offers and sales of Ether are not securities transactions.
The emails show that Hinman knew he wasn't following the law. He knew he was making things up, And he knew that his speech would result in greater confusion in an already
Didn't care.
confused market. But Hinman went ahead with the speech anyway. And the SEC, despite knowing all this, touted the speech repeatedly. The SEC chairman himself pointed market participants to the speech.
Bill Hinman recently outlined the approach
Hinman.
we take to evaluate whether a digital asset is a security. And I encourage you to take a look at Bill's speech, which is available on our website.
The SEC knew the speech didn't follow the law. The SEC knew the speech would create greater confusion. And the SEC knew Hinman was making things up. So why is the Hinman speech still on the SEC's website? Why was it ever allowed to be given at all? And why has the SEC pushed a policy of regulation by enforcement, falsely insisting the rules are clear?
Think about that, Jeff.
Man, that was really powerful. And the thing is that it bleeds over from Hinman over into Gary Gensler, like almost like zero change in dynamic, right? But they're putting a lot of weight over on Hinman for the beginning efforts. Now, as we kind of continue things and we kind of go through to where we're at today, the messaging, the tone, it's gotten worse. It hasn't gotten better. So there's definitely a systemic issue going on at multiple levels of government, acting on their own chip. I think we've referenced this, multiple times over, that the unelected bureaucrat believes that they are the ones in charge. They're the ones that have all the power, and they're the ones that actually make the law. And they couldn't be further from the truth, whether, we're seeing, different agencies within government. And it's really, it's a shame to really see what's happening, that we don't have more integrity at these higher levels. And more than that, Chip, is that we have the elected officials are not holding the unelected bureaucrat to account. We have some that are talking and trying to pass the legislation to make some changes. Warren Davidson recently issued, along with Tom Emmer, some legislation to oust the chair of the SEC and make some changes on how that runs. There's only one little, fragment of government. And if you don't change all of it to reflect, how do you micro change just the SEC? It doesn't make sense. You'd have to change the structure of the CFTC. You have to change the structure of many of the different entities within government. But starting at that point, that was an amazing video.
Yeah, it was
What do you
well put
think?
together, and they were
Yeah.
ready for it, right? They were just like salivating to get it out there. Brad Garlinghouse says absolutely unconscionable that a regulator, when presented with so much pushback on what he was about to say and how he compiled this fake test in the first place, decided to move forward anyway and throw an entire industry into chaos. Remember the
There
price
you
of
go.
ETH, how it shot up after that, right? So and then it was like, well, another point that I saw in that video that was kind of a little bit more sort of, I guess, it was a little more suppressed. It wasn't so obvious, but when Clayton alluded and says, "Go take a look at the speech," that Bill Hinman gave. So I remember they said it. Well, it wasn't necessarily. It was a personal opinion. It wasn't the SEC. But then you had Clayton say, "Go look at the speech. This is kind of how we think about it." And so the funny thing about that is, that opened up a lot of discovery on Ripple's behalf as well. But he goes on to say that, and of course we watched that video, but he says, for the SEC to sue Chris Larson and me personally for alleging selling unregistered securities when their own division had deliberately created confusion about this, well, I don't have a single polite word to describe this deplorable, politically motivated overreach. And you could actually probably interject deplorable, politically motivated overreach with probably some F-bombs and some other things in there, because he's being about as polite as he can. But it is a massive overreach, Jeff. And it does seem to be politically motivated, right? Well,
Massively politically motivated. But that's something that we had said, right, even way back in the beginning when this all started. We said that there was a political element to this. When the lawsuit dropped, there was something more motivated to slowing down, detrimentally impacting, or getting Ripple to cave to external pressure. Maybe they thought that Ripple would step to the table and settle immediately. Maybe they didn't anticipate the war chest and the long game. Maybe they figured, hey, we're going to come out after you and you guys are just going to bend over and that's going to be the end of it.
So what they didn't expect, Jeff, and to your point, is what they didn't expect was they didn't expect 80,000 XRP holders to be represented by superhero John E. Deaton. Just to kind of finish up this with Brad Garlinghouse, he goes on to say that seeing the depth of which the SEC is essentially, there we go, to which the SEC has essentially weaponized the lack of regulatory clarity through enforcement actions. Since the speech was given, it's no surprise that we can all call bluff on their claims to just come in and register as nothing but in bad faith. And so much has gotten exposed in this. And again, I think the SEC didn't expect this. I don't think they expected any of this. I mean, I don't think that they thought that any of this was going to actually happen. But again, they didn't count on investors saying, I'm sick and tired of this, I'm going to fight back. And it wasn't just local too. It's like, we're talking worldwide. But when you start messing with people's wallets, when you start messing with their money, people tend to not like that. And when you wrote $15 billion, and it's more than that. I mean, the damages, and then all of a sudden, a lot of people had their 401ks and XRP, and all of a sudden frozen, right? And even if we had a price pump, suppose they did that at like when Ripple was 0.15, and then when it's gone up as high as $2, almost 180 or something like that. But over the course of this lawsuit, their funds are frozen. So you basically you've handicapped somebody with access to their own investment money that they with their own hard-earned money. And this is wrong on so many different fronts.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.